Hey my lovelies, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reading on Dan Schneider. This is going to be a real quick reading. I'm going to start doing these real short readings because I'm going to be real with y'all. The reason why I don't post a lot of readings is because I put a lot of pressure on myself to, basically read for minutes upon minutes. Like I want each video to at least be 20 minutes, 15 minutes, but I realized, wait, it doesn't have to be that way. I can read people within under 10 minutes. And the way I psychically read, I don't know, y'all. My portals have been very open lately. My portals meaning my third eye, my intuition, my sixth sense. So I can just look at people, think of people, not even look. I can just think of somebody and I can get psychic downloads. Y'all, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Maybe I'm evolving. Y'all let me know if y'all experience this. But anyways, yeah, today I'll be reading on Dan Schneider and his weird creep ass. Basically, I'm just gonna be reading on what was he like, what was it like working with him, and what did the childhood stars have to deal with while working with this man? Okay, what was he really like? I don't really dive too much into backstory and all of that because what the fuck is the point? Like, there's no excuse for why he turned out to be the monster that he was or is, right? There is no excuse for really going into the backstory. That's why I never really dig into anybody's backstory because it's like, listen, you could have been raised right and you probably would have still turned out to be the person that you were. So that's why I read into the person themselves and not too much their backstory. But if you are new here, hi, my name is Soraya. I'm a psychic intuitive. Listen, the thumbnail for this video is going to be ghetto as fuck because I'm just trying to post this as quick as soon as possible. But let's get into Dan Schneider weird ass. Okay, so the downloads that I'm getting from Dan Schneider is that he was always a creep. I feel like he was probably touched by a man, not a woman. He was touched at a young age, aka sexually assaulted. Um, as a young boy. I feel like between the ages of 12, 11, and 10, there's something about like where he was coming into his puberty. I don't feel like he was too young, but I don't also feel like he was too old. So it was one of those ages where he was either just about to get into puberty or he was coming into puberty. Now I know I said I don't dive too much in the backstory because yeah, I'm just not gonna do that. I feel like he had a normal childhood, probably grew up a bit poor or middle class. I don't think he grew up rich at all. I think he grew up a bit poor or middle class. I would say on the poor middle class side. Now let's get into what it was like working with him. First of all, I also, before we move on to the future, right, I also feel like he was always the weird kid in class. It kind of feels like he could have been bullied. I'm hearing he could have been called a freak, or he was just that weird kid in class. Like some people might have thought he was weirdly quiet, right? Like one of those kids that don't really talk much. Either that or yeah, he probably wasn't as sociable. And this is like I'm hearing middle school and high school I'm talking about, right? And I also feel like he could have been a bit bullied or just unwanted as a kid or a teenager because there's something about like the girls his age not really being interested in him, and it's about his looks. It's not really about his personality or anything like that. It feels like back then was a much different time, and that's going to be the overall theme of this video you're going to come to see of this reading is back then was a much different time, right? So it feels like the time where he grew up, people were a lot more judgmental. People were very like, it feels like there wasn't a lot of sugarcoating, right? Like there wasn't a lot of sugarcoating. There wasn't a lot of sensitivity around certain issues. And so it feels like, if you were fat back then, you were fat. You were known as the fat kid. Nobody wanted to mess with you. You probably didn't get any girls. You were bullied. That's all everybody would talk about, right? So because he was fat, that became his identity when he was younger. And I do feel like, girls probably called him like a freak or something. It feels like he was called a freak at one point during his adolescent years, younger adolescent years. So now let's get into him becoming a director and getting into Nickelodeon. First of all, it doesn't feel like money or fame changed him. It just feels like money and fame brought out his true character, right? So I do feel like what came with, being a director on Nickelodeon came with a bunch of confidence, right? And it's the typical like kid that never really got attention is now getting all the attention, and now their head is as big as a fucking, I don't know, like gumball drop. I don't know, head is big as hell, right? So it feels like, what came with this new sense of power was him realizing and acknowledging he could do everything. I feel like once he realized how much power he had, that's when he started to abuse it. I don't feel like he initially realized how much power he had, but it feels like everybody being like, oh my gosh, Dan Snyder, you're the best. Like, it feels like once he really started to become acknowledged for his creativity, because I will say this, I think he genuinely was like a somewhat creative guy. I think he had creative ideas. So it doesn't feel like he was completely talentless. But it does feel like once he started to be acknowledged for that creativity and that greatness is when his head got big, right? He slowly started to realize that he could do whatever he wanted to do. Like what came with being the director was calling the shots and all of that, right? So let's get into what it was like working with Dan Schneider. First of all, Dan Schneider, he feels like a creep. I feel like he could have had a fetish for young, tiny women. Like not just younger girls, but it feels like there was some nymph. I'm hearing nymph, Lolita, nymphilia, something like that. There's some sort of fetish for not just younger girls, but specifically petite and small. Something about that. He liked to feel the power and control over others because I'm hearing that's something he probably couldn't exercise when he was younger. Mainly, I don't know if he had an abusive mother. It feels like his mother could have been a bit like withdrawn or simply not super emotionally available, So it feels like I don't know how that really correlates, but it feels like he likes to back then he could have exhibited a lot of abuse of power because there was a point in his adolescence, like I said, if we go back to when he was being bullied in school, where he didn't feel powerful at all. He probably got bullied, who knows, but I don't really sense a heavy bullying in his energy. But anyways, yeah, I'm sensing that there was a fetish for young, small, petite girls. um I felt like working with him was chaotic and it was stressful because I'm hearing his mood was very finicky. He was a very finicky guy. So when he was a good mood, everything was great. But if he was in a bad mood, it was a very heavy day. I felt like the people that worked beneath him, people that didn't have as much power as him, I felt like they constantly worked with anxiety because it's like if we mess up his mood, then the whole everything's gonna be blown out of proportion. Like everything's gonna be ruined, right? So he was very emotionally reactive and emotionally immature, is what I'm hearing. He does not know how to handle his emotions. If he's feeling upset, you're gonna know somebody's probably gonna get fired. So I feel like he's definitely probably fired somebody, not because of a genuine real reason, but because he was upset or they didn't do something that he wanted. So there's that. I do feel like him being touched as a kid by a man is what made him somewhat, do that to other young men. And it feels like he had a fetish for young girls because he liked the power he had. Something about the power dynamic over or the control over young women. Very, very strange. Now, some of y'all may be asking, how did he get away with this for so long? I don't think Dan Schneider was the only one in the Nickelodeon studios that was doing this. It just feels like he was the most upfront with his weirdo behavior, and he was also the most one of the most powerful ones, right? So because he had so much power and he was calling all the shots, he could do and say whatever he wanted. But I don't feel like Dan Schneider was the only one that was into this weird perverted abuse of child. Like, yeah, first of all the children that worked with him, I feel like faced some sort of work abuse of power, whether it was him. I just can't help but feel like people lost opportunities with him. People and children that have worked with him have lost opportunities if they did not do as he said. So a bit of a dictator as well. But yeah, I don't think he was the only one. It feels like there was somebody else, his right hand man. There was a guy he was really close with that worked at Nickelodeon at that time that was into that same shit. Like I'm hearing one or two guys that were also like in similar positions as him, meaning like some sort of director or something like that, right? Some sort of assistants. They were into the same thing, and that's why this gone quiet for so long. And also, like I said, his position of power. But yeah, with the amount of people I'm hearing that were into that same thing, that were cool with this, that didn't see any problem with this, with the amount of people, I feel like Nickelodeon should be shut down. Like with all these allegations against Nickelodeon, y'all should be shut down. This was supposed to be a children's show network. This was supposed to be a children's network, and y'all allowed a pervert to get in there. Y'all, when I tell you guys, looking back, like ever since this like speculation and this I guess you could say newfound information has come out about Dan Schneider, like I look back at all the shows I used to watch, and it's like, no wonder some scenes would make me uncomfortable. Like, y'all know one show I just couldn't get through? iCarly. If you watch iCarly, bro, every other episode, they were smearing stuff on their face, on their toes. Like, it was so messy. And I'm a very cleanly person. I wouldn't say I have OCD, but I'm just a very, like, neat person. And seeing all that mess used to make me so uncomfortable. Like, it would have nothing to do with the plot line as well. So we can't say, oh, like, it was for the plot. No, it had nothing to do with the plot line. There was just always be mess on that show. And looking back, now I see why. Like, I'm low key traumatized that I watched that shit. Like, I always wondered, why didn't I like iCarly? That's why, y'all. And I'm not joking. If y'all think I'm joking, look at the episode. Look at iCarly. Every other episode, there was product. Mostly it was food. And if y'all don't know, there are some fetishes that do cater to like messes and food on the face, specifically toes, like just weird, weird shit, creepy shit. But yeah, overall, I'm hearing he was a geezer. He was a geezer and also an incel. I feel like Dan Schneider was an incel, meaning he could have thought that women were at lower positions than men, right? So he didn't really respect women as much as men, or he thought that women were mainly for entertainment or, you know, sexual gratification, and that's it. um, Now I do feel like when it comes to this whole scandal, Dan Schneider, I don't think he's that apologetic. I don't think he's that apologetic. I think he wishes he would have been a bit more discreet about it. But from what I'm feeling from his energy, his excuse for all of this is that was the time. It was normal, right? He could also be contemplating like spilling the beans on somebody else, because what I'm hearing from him is it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. If you think it was just me, you're crazy. It wasn't just me. It feels like it was everybody, right? Like that was the norm. I'm also hearing some people could have probably even encouraged him to do certain things. You know what I mean? Not, I don't want to say like force, because again, Dan was in a position of power. Nobody forced him, nobody held a gun up to his head to do shit. Um, but it does kind of feel like there was multiple people involved as well, and he wasn't the only one, and it feels like it was normalized. I'm hearing even before I was there, this shit was going on. So that is just the work culture at Nickelodeon. That was the time, is what his energy is saying. Not like, let me clarify, y'all. This is not me saying this for all the people, because I'm tired of people saying, like, oh, you're too opinionated. This is not an opinion. This is a reading. This is a psychic download. I'm not going to say every few sentence I'm psychically getting. Y'all, this is all a psychic intuitive download. Okay? Um, Now, what's next? It feels like the reason Dan Schneider got fired was because he disobeyed somebody. I think he kind of got too drunk on power, and maybe he thought he was above the program. That's why it feels like he got fired. It didn't feel like he got fired because of all of this, like child, this, that, and the third. If they did truly fire him for, you know, him being weird with children, like I said, I can't say everything because YouTube might demonetize this video. It feels like, um, if they did fire him because of that, they fired him because they didn't want to take the blame. Like they didn't want him bringing the brand down. It doesn't feel like they morally disagreed with what he did. It just feels like they don't want to get held accountable for it. Like they don't want to be associated with that. But mostly what I'm getting is that Dan Schneider, he got into some sort of beef. I feel like there was some sort of conflict of interest that was going on. And because he was at opposition with somebody else in the company, he got fired. Somebody else who also had the same amount of power as him or even more. That is why he got fired. But other than that, I felt like he would have continued to work there if all those things didn't matter. Meaning, yeah, Nickelodeon is very corrupt. The fact that they allowed this to happen, and I'm seeing multiple people witnessing what he's doing, and even some partaking in it, and they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. I do feel like some of the childhood actors, you know, people on Victorious and iCarly, I do feel like working with him was very. I'm just feeling like heavy loads of anxiety. Like you just never know what he's gonna say. I felt like he was a bit of a firecracker, and again, a bit impulsive based off of his emotions, specifically anger. It feels like if he got angry, he would lash out a little bit, right? So, say for example, I'm asking somebody to have a sleepover and they're like, no. And then I throw my phone at the wall. Like, that's the kind of, he gives punch the wall energy. And y'all already know what punch the wall energy. Listen, if you've been on here for a while, you know what punch the wall energy means. That means somebody that is emotionally reactive, and a bit unpredictable. So that's the word. He was unpredictable with his reactions. So I do feel like some people could have got fired on the spot because they upset him. I also feel like he enjoyed the feeling of being feeling like a king. So I don't know. I'm seeing him on the set of like Victorious or iCarly. He's behind the camera. You know, he has all the papers, like the book of whatever scripts they're reading from today, you know, for the episode. And I see like a young girl massaging his back as he's laying on this couch doing this. And it feels a bit inappropriate because this girl looks very young, but yeah, there's just something about him enjoying the feeling of having power over others. Like he liked to dominate. I feel like he likes to choke out, like he likes to choke while he's doing the do, if y'all get what I'm trying to say. But yeah, he definitely, you know, took advantage of young boys and girls. That's for sure. That's what I'm getting from his energy, for sure. He himself was violated, but that's no excuse. Absolutely no excuse. Will he be held accountable? Yes and no. I don't feel like he'll be held accountable for everything. Some things will be hidden in the closet forever, aka he'll have some skeletons in the closet that probably may never be revealed because other people are involved, is what I'm getting. And other people, I'm not talking about the victims. I'm talking about the people that were like him behind the scenes, the people that weren't so like he took most of the blame for everything that's happening. He's taken a lot of the blame because his name is on the front paper, right? At the end of each episode, and I remember this, at the end of each episode for Victoria's Secret, at the end of each episode for Victorious and iCarly, every time, guess what it would say? In big bold letters, directed by Dan Schneider. So he's taking the blame for a lot of this because his name is on the paper. But the people that were with him, whose name is not so big on the paper, they're also found responsible. So whoever, for example, say you watched the show and you've seen the rolling credits and it would say directed by Dan Schneider, the people right after, all the men, they're also to be held accountable as well. I promise you, they did something as well. Either they did something or they did nothing. And doing nothing is still a crime when you're witnessing a crime. Period. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is my quick little reading on Dan Schneider. Yes, I do feel like all the kids that worked with him are severely traumatized. And a lot of the trauma comes from them feeling like they have no power. Like imagine your boss who's temperamental as fuck and, you know, flips out over little shit. You know what I mean? You would feel like you'd have to do everything as well. I do also feel like this guy was a perv. Long story short, y'all, Dan Schneider was a fucking perv. He was a perv. Like, he just had some weird fetishes. I feel like, besides the petite young woman fetish, it feels like he enjoyed, like, crushing people with his weight. I don't know. What the fuck? I feel like he also enjoyed, can I say this on camera? Y'all, I might put this on Patreon because this should have been on Patreon. Y'all are lucky I'm doing this on YouTube. The next readings I'm gonna do on Patreon because this is like, I'm not gonna say it. I know I hate, I know. I'm hypocritical because I'm like, girl, if you gonna spill the tea, spill the full tea. He liked to see people with messes on their face. And you know what type of mess I'm talking about. Male bodily fluids. For some reason, that's a fetish for him. Again, it's the power, it's the feeling of, oh yeah, I did that, like you got me all over your weird shit, you got me all over your face, just weird shit. And yeah, that's the reason he was able to get away with what he got away with for so long, was the title associated with his name, and having power, and people also being into the same thing as him. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Dan Schneider is an incel that became a director, pretty much. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment, like, share, hype this video up, y'all. Seriously, subscribe if you want to see more. Help a sister come up. Subscribe, comment, like, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace. Now I'm gonna get ready for work.